President Biden is set to meet with Vladimir Putin this morning to discuss the Russian troop buildup along the Ukraine border. The White House has prepared a new round of sanctions on Russia, but they are stressing the diplomatic route to resolve this crisis is best. Watch.
I would say that our objective here, Cecilia, is conveying diplomatically that this is the moment for Russia to pull back their military buildup at the border, that diplomacy is the right path forward here.
And joining me right now is Fox News senior strategic analyst, General Jack Keane. General, it's good to see you. And let me take this opportunity on this Pearl Harbor Day to thank you for your incredible service to our great country over these several decades.
Oh, thank you very much, Maria. And we certainly honor what took place at that Pearl Harbor, and quite extraordinary.
Yep. It sure is extraordinary, launching the United States into World War II. Your thoughts on where we are in terms of conflict with Russia?
Well, first of all, just going back to Pearl Harbor, I mean, it was that surprise attack that finally got the United States involved, not only in war against Japan, but quite significantly with Europe, which the American people largely wanted to stay out of. But they declared war against us, and obviously we made a major contribution in both theaters. No country had a larger task than what the United States had to fight a war in Europe and also in the Pacific. But given what's going on here today with President Biden and Putin, this is a very consequential meeting. It's one of the most significant meetings we've had in decades, frankly, because we have the Russian president right on the cusp of a military operation, certainly in Ukraine, with 110,000 forces there. And I think he's got three issues that are driving him. One is he doesn't want Ukraine to become a part of NATO, and he's very frustrated after 7 years of being in Crimea and in eastern Ukraine. The Ukrainian people overwhelmingly want to move towards the West in terms of their fledgling democracy and have an economic integration with the European Union and a military and political alliance with NATO. And that is very frustrating for him. Number two, he doesn't want us to provide lethal military assistance to Ukraine. He's looking at not just us, but NATO members. And the third thing is he doesn't want the Ukraine military, which has been building up its capability, to increase its forces and begin to crush the separatist movement in eastern Ukraine. Those are the lines that he has going into this discussion. And certainly Biden has got to push back on the fact that Ukraine's a sovereign state. They make up their own minds who they want to be aligned with, the European Union and NATO. And it's not our place to certainly dictate those terms to them. But quite frankly, is I think the major issue, it's off the table that U.S. troops and NATO troops are going to go into Ukraine and try to prevent an attack or respond to an attack that takes place, because it's not an aligned NATO mission. We've had three presidents dealing with Putin over Ukraine, Obama, Trump, and now Biden, and we've never put troops on the table as an issue in dealing with the Ukraine, and we've never taken that as a red line to the American people. So that's not going to happen. Whoa. But sanctions are. N2, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, it's still there, and we can stop the use of it. So banking sanctions, the SWIFT banking system, the telecommunication network that drives transfers and payments, all very tough economic sanctions would have a devastating effect on Putin's economy, and certainly going after his inner circle, similar to what President Trump did with oligarchs. There's plenty of options here in terms of some very tough economic sanctions that Biden can impose, but they also have to have a way for Putin, if he's not going to commit troops in there, to walk away with something in his hand, because he's not going to back down and be humiliated in front of his own people. That's not Putin. Well, so these negotiations are very critical.
Will he do any of that? I mean, you know, he's got options, but will he actually do any of that? No doubt Vladimir Putin is taking a page out of China's book with the CCP, making it clear that Taiwan is their red line. So we've got two situations here that seem to be bubbling up, the CCP and Taiwan and Russia and Ukraine. And then we learned this week that China is seeking its first military base on the Atlantic Ocean in the country of Equatorial Guinea. What impact does that have on national security as well?
Well, getting back to what you mentioned initially, you put your finger on the issue that I have. Is our resolve and our determination to execute. And I think it's no accident, Maria, that in this 10 months of the Biden administration, China, Iran, and Russia have all accelerated their aggression in trying to take advantage of the United States to achieve their national objectives. They've all upped their game. And why is that? I think it's because they perceive that this administration is more about accommodation and appeasement than it is about confrontation and countering their objectives. So that is the concern I have, that we'll go in there, talk tough, but still play a weak hand. In terms of the base in Africa, certainly that's of concern to us. China now will have a naval facility, looks likely, on the Atlantic, the first one ever. We're pushing back on that, and hopefully our diplomatic efforts and our ability to assist this country will make a difference. But I think it's a little late. This first came up in 2019. The Trump administration talked to the country about it. We've been working on this for a number of months, and we haven't been able to dissuade them so far. The president of that country and President Xi have a relationship. We've sanctioned that country for human rights violations and been quite critical of them, and we have ample justification for that. They're a rich country. Well, they have oil, offshore oil, and we could impact that a little bit because our oil companies are sustaining that effort. So we have some leverage here, but I believe, look, China is trying to become a global power. We have hundreds of bases outside the United States. China has one in Djibouti, very close to the Suez Canal choke point, and from which they can influence the Middle East oil that they are completely dependent on. And now they have one in the Atlantic. They're going to have many other global bases. That's just a fact. They want to be a global power. And if you want to be a global military power, you have to be able to project that power. And military bases are one of the ways you do it.
And we'll see if they all end up taking over Bagram Air Base as well in Afghanistan. It certainly feels to me like the U.S. is on its heels in the face of all of this, but we'll be watching this Putin-Biden call and report back. General, it's good to see you. Thanks very much. General Jack Keane joining us this morning.